Today there's going to be no fancy intros and minimal editing because I think it's finally a very good time to actually talk about what's going on at the club. Now, first of all, I've let my opinion settle a little bit from the 0-0 draw against Everton because obviously a lot of frustration comes in with a result like that, which is arguably our worst performance and result of the season. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, we still created some chances and Arteta came out saying that we should have won and we limited Everton, but I do think there's a lot more context around that game that needs to happen to come to that conclusion. Now, first of all, that game is not good enough. We did not create enough, and saying Everton were limited in chances is fair enough, but they didn't really come out and play, and we should be limiting Everton, a team that try to counter-attack but aren't very good at it quite often. And all the other away games they've gone to, the top 6 sides, have been kind of destroyed. Not good enough, and against us they looked absolutely fine for the whole 90. Now, first of all, I completely understand the frustration. I'm very annoyed and not exactly happy with the team right now, and I think that has made people really consider what we did in the summer and if we did the right things. And now, like many of you, I completely agree that the attack is simply just not good enough. I think that the squad players that we've had, I've said for a while, do not compare to the teams around us. Even teams like Manchester United and Tottenham probably have better attacking options and at least more variety. And I think a big issue with the Arteta reign is that he gives a lot of trust to players that who are doing well at the time but may not do well in the future he doesn't care about, and kind of just sees the short-term plan with a lot of them, which is not really great. Now, I've been very critical on Martinelli for a while. I just think even as an out-and-out winger, he is not that sort of player. He needs to work inside the box, which is something we can't operate to him, and I don't think he should be forgiven because his tactical knowledge has not necessarily been what we wanted it to, or he's been misprofiled. Ultimately, if you're a winger and you can't be good in a 1v1, you are a flawed player. That is something that they should be good at, and he is just not, so I can't see him being in the team. But he gets in the squad because he works hard, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I do think his defensive work is great, but this is the same problem I think that keeps popping up for Arteta. He's too conservative at times. He just sees good work out of defensive and hard-working players rather than players that are actually going to be that difference in front of goal. And I think Arsenal have become a very stale side. I think at the start of last season we were as well, and then eventually we got a bit better when we were pushed to shove and had to kind of change the setup a little bit. And I think for ages I do agree with the sentiment that people have hid behind the red cards and the injuries we've had, when we've dropped points in 8 games out of 16 this season in the league, which is just simply not anywhere near title contention, and we're lucky that teams around us are also having similar problems. Now, first of all, I just think one of the biggest issues, not only as we are pragmatic and stale, especially going forward, it's just that we're so predictable. Now, last year we became unpredictable because we had different players come in, and I get that the fullbacks are supposed to help that this season. We've had on and off injuries with them, but even on the weekend against the dogged mid to low block, we really struggle to actually break them down. And I do think that we don't have enough central creation. Now, I think Mourinho was a good sign, and I still think Mourinho can provide a lot for Arsenal, but he's more of someone that is facilitating Martinelli, who is just simply not being great, and he's supposed to drag players away from him so he gets one-on-ones, which I think he's just awful at the moment. He's just not been good enough at them. And the problem with that is he is not an actual attacker creator, so we're leaving most of our creative work down to Odegaard, who yet again for years now I've been saying he is a number 8, not a number 10. He is not a natural creator person. He can create lots of chances and has created more than a lot of players, but considering how much he gets the ball for Arsenal, it's not comparable. He doesn't create things out of nothing, and a lot of the times he'll do some good intricate play with Saka, but he just does not do enough to help Saka in good situations. But I think the biggest issue with the Odegaard situation is the repetition. Now, if you see this photo here, you can just clearly see that Arsenal are going to play a 1-2 with Saka over and over again. I know it's a hard task to compare him to, but when you look at people like Kevin De Bruyne, he can cut in and curl that back post or do many multiple things. Now, I'm not saying Odegaard can't do that. We have seen him do it before, but he just doesn't do it enough, and it's not part of his regular play that he uses. He loves that 1-2 pass because he likes smaller passing levels. He's not really a long passer and a deep crosser, which causes Arsenal so many issues because we have to get him into that settled play where there's already 5 or 6 players trying to go up against them. problem. And I know one of the big reasons why this struggles is because of the left side not being effective enough, but it is still another point of contention. I also think the strikers are just not really good enough. Now, I will never say that about Havertz, and some people may call it bias, but even if you watch the Everton game, the chances that Arsenal were creating was because Havertz was coming deeper inside and making passes through the defence. He has to come back deeper to create that central progression because no one else does. Odegaard is not great at carrying the ball dribbling, so we're not getting it from there, especially when he's man-marked, and none of the other midfielders actually are. And the crosses that are continually produced by anyone other than Saka are awful. Havertz sits in the box as a 6'4" dominant header, never gets it. The crosses are not good enough, and the end product is not good enough at all from the creative aspect. And this is why I don't think buying a striker is going to make much difference. And I know a lot of people don't like my opinion on that, but this is how I feel. Even if we were to get an Osimhen or even a Gyökeres, what's going to make the difference? They're going to have to come deeper to pick the ball up to create, and then they won't be in there for when it matters. And when they are going to be in there, the balls are not good enough and they won't have the same ability. We are wasteful in chance creation. When we do create chances in games, we do mess up a lot and don't take them chances. But there's a lot of games where this season we haven't created enough. If you look at the XG we've created in the league, other than the Leicester game, we haven't really been that good. And a 1.4 against Everton was one of the highest that we'd had in such a long time, and they didn't even try to get out of their defence. And a lot of this I do think is on Arteta. I think his pragmatic approach to continually play for Arsenal is going to cause us problems. He'd rather be safe than go out and win a game, and I feel like that is becoming a severe problem. He has said that he would rather want his team to be slow and work with the ball than rush, which I understand, but there is times where you need to rush and have that end product. But what I don't think a lot of people realise is that there are clear flaws to nearly every player that Arsenal have, especially going forward. And Arteta for a long time with his tactics, I think masked that to make the team functional, but I don't actually think we're at that level. Now, of course, that is definitely a project of Arteta not buying players in the summer, but I don't think that's entirely his fault. Like I said, it seemed like we couldn't spend anything because of FFP, and we had to basically do a buy one get one out system, which I get we maybe didn't do the right ideas, you could say. Calafiori injury prone, I think Mourinho is needed, but we needed more there. If there's going to be any criticism of Arsenal in the transfer market, it has to be down to a safe approach. Now, we're not the only elite club that has been doing this. Liverpool have done this over the last few years, which other than this year has seen them decrease. But to have one or two targets in a set position because they fit the profile, the personality, and exactly what you need, and then you don't get them, is becoming a severe problem because we're not getting anyone in, and then it's causing bad issues. Like, for instance, we want wingers and we don't get them, like Nico Williams, let's say, and we end up just rushing to get Sterling in, which seemed like an Edu signing anyway, and clearly Arteta does not like him. Arteta has given him no minutes and sees him basically as that Reece Nelson right wing sub appearance maker. He's not given any time on the left, even though the left is completely dysfunctional right now, especially the wingers being poor, and it just asks what's the point of paying him 100k a week for him to sit on the bench. And currently with no director of football or no sporting director, I don't know what situation Arsenal are going to get in. It may be another aspect where we can't even spend that much in January, not necessarily down to Arteta, because I think that all the blame on him is very unfair. I think the board have a big issue with this as well, and the quite frankly stupid FFP rules that you can just get around by cheating, I think, are dumb. But if we don't sign anyone, then we're going to be in severe problems, and I think the idea of giving Trossard a new contract just shows that I just don't think the club are really thinking in the right ways right now. And I get that might be to sell him for more money, but that's not something we should really be focusing on. We should be focusing on improving that side and getting us someone that's in their 30s next year. Now, I do think this isn't all Arteta's fault, and I do think some games have been necessarily his problem, and I get it's frustrating for the fans when after we've just drawn to Everton, an awful result, he comes out saying, well, we should have won. Everton created nothing. Yeah, of course Everton created nothing. They didn't try to. They're away at the Emirates. Like, we shouldn't get credit, I don't think, for that in big ways. We defended well, cool, but teams can defend well if you don't create anything. I also think that some of the discourse around Arteta online is quite frankly stupid, but you know this always happens with Arsenal fans. A lot of the time on the internet we are very reactionary, and I thought maybe us being crap for a few years and coming 8th in the league would give people a little bit more patience, but I get in this situation why people are angry given the amount of years we've have had to learn for this. But I will say some of the other YouTube channels that cover Arsenal, I think it's quite disgraceful how they've even spoke about some of our players and team. Now, I'm not saying you have to respect Arteta and love everything he does, or even think he is the right man for the job, even though personally I still obviously think he is. But some of the things that have been said I think are absolutely unacceptable, and a couple of months later, if we are doing well, everyone will not even think about the things that are said. And I do think that the platforms that are showing these people are not true to the average Arsenal fan. The frustration is there, of course, but we have to be much more intelligent when we make decisions on the internet. And I know there's criticism on Arteta's subs and all these other things that I do think are yet again valid reasons to be kind of annoyed at him at the end of the day, because I don't think he has been managing the club the best way in the last couple of months. I do think sometimes it's not his fault. I do think with the transfers it's not all his fault, but I do not think Arsenal have any other options. He is the project at the end of the day, and I don't think anyone else at the club would be able to get us to another level. People always go on about sacking him, which makes no sense, because who would we get in? No one wants to come up with solutions. They just want to complain, which is not something I really want to do. Now, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing videos about wingers that we should sign, and potentially maybe strikers if we are still looking at them positions, because obviously I think the attacking line is important, and I think not only in January but in the summer we can't stop there. We need to stop signing defenders, maybe sign a defender if Zinchenko or someone else was to leave, but we need to sign midfielders and attackers from now on if we're going to continue. Now, like I said, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that some of the things that I spoke about are way blown out of proportion. I think we are still a good team, and even if we don't win the league this year, it's not the end of the world. We've got next year, we've got a young team, but we have to improve and learn from these things. It just feels like we're very stop start, and the team just don't really want to take responsibility. I'm not impressed at all with the Everton result. I think it's just a disgrace, but we have to keep going. And now we've got Palace next week, and if we continue not to do anything in front of goal, it's going to get worse and worse. Now, this is kind of where I sit on things. I don't necessarily agree with all the takes, but I can understand people's frustrations, and I do think that the signings that we made weren't necessarily the best we could have done, and I'm a bit annoyed by Arsenal's whole market opportunity system where we're not actually going out there and buying exciting players, but even then we're not taking enough risks. We don't take enough risks in games, and we don't take enough risks in the transfer market, and if you don't take any risks, eventually this is going to catch up with you, and I think it has finally. Now, overall, let me know in the comments what you guys think. I will completely understand any frustration right now, because I think that's fair enough, but hopefully it improves. I'll see you in the next one.